StrayAllDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is, we are starting a quick two-part series here that is titled Why Dre Baldwin is Not Corporate. Why I do not do a lot of corporate work, why I don't work in corporate, even though I think I could somehow, some way get away with it if I wanted to, why I don't do it. I'm going to explain that today and tomorrow. Before we get into this, I remind you all two things. First of all, my daily motivation, Monday motivation message is guaranteed to have you focused, sharp, and on point to start your day or your week, respectively. All you got to do to receive these is be part of my texting community. Text me at my number, 305-384-6894. And when we start sending that message out again, you'll be getting it straight to your phone. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. If you want to get access to all of my best trainings, all of our best strategies and systems and applications when it comes to your mindset and your personal and professional development, that is the place where you go. That is where your journey starts in the Work on Your Game world, aside from what you're listening to right now. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. You can see everything we have, everything you get, and how to get started, all at that link. Again, that is also down below in the description, workonyourgameuniversity.com. So this subject here, I have touched on this many times in the past on this show. I even did an episode explaining why I can never do something such as running for political office, why I can never get into the political game. I was talking about that in episode 1667, why I would fail if I was to ever get into politics. And today I'm going to explain to you specifically why I can never work in the corporate space, at least not as a full-time employee. And I don't even do personally, even as an entrepreneur, or like I say, a for-hire entrepreneur, I still don't do a whole lot of work with corporations for many of the same reasons that I'm going to lay out here today and tomorrow. And many of these are parallel reasons to why I couldn't work in the government space, let's say as a politician, like an elected politician. Same reason that I probably would not succeed in the corporate world. I would not succeed in government for the exact same reason I'm going to lay out here again today and tomorrow. So let's get right to it. Point number one. Topic once again is why Dre Baldwin is not corporate. Number one, I am very good at following rules and processes that someone else has created. I'm actually very good at that. I just don't want to. So the first part of that sentence is actually a good reason to work in corporate, because corporations, they become corporations because they have processes, they have systems, they have everything laid out that tells you exactly what to do, when to do it, where to do it, why to do it, and how to do it. I'm very good at following rules and directions. I just don't want to follow rules and directions that were created by someone other than myself. You know what they say? They say that the best students in school tend to go on to become great employees, and I found that to be true. So any of you who you remember back when you were in school, the students who are really good, many of them usually became great corporate employees, because school is designed to prepare you to go to work and follow a system the same way the school itself has a system. And even the students that I remember being classmates with, who were really good students, I mean, they were way better than me. I was a good enough student, but I'm talking about people who were really good and they excelled at being students. They often went on to work either for the government, or they went to work in corporate, or they did a combination of both. And as I just explained, I just touched on, the educational system in the United States was designed and is still designed to create obedient, rule-following individuals. That is what school is designed to do, to make you obedient and get you used to following the rules all day, every day. Think about when you were in school. That's exactly how it works. And those who are best at doing that get the best grades. Isn't that the reward for following the rules and doing everything that the teacher tells you to do? You get really good grades and you get recognition for that, and that pushes you to the next thing, whatever that may be in your life, which usually is some form of working in the government or working in corporate America, because they are designed similarly to how school was designed. And those good students go on to get good jobs, and they work at those jobs they work out their salvation working at those jobs. I was a good enough student, as I said, not because I lacked any amount of intelligence, and not because I didn't have the ability to be obedient and follow rules. I just told you that I was pretty good at being obedient and following rules. And contrary to maybe some public opinion, I do have a good amount of intelligence. That's a joke. I simply did not want to follow the rules. That's why, again, I didn't go that route. Once I figured out what I now know about alternative ways of having a career and being a professional, specifically through entrepreneurship. Yes, I became an athlete as well, but even if I had not played sports, then I would have just jumped straight into entrepreneurship, or at least I would have tried as quickly as possible. I would have went into sales and then entrepreneurship, not into the corporate structure. I knew that following the process of what school was offering me and following that into a career, that was a ladder that I did not want to climb. There's nothing wrong with climbing that ladder, but I didn't want to climb that ladder. And again, this is what this whole subject is about, why I am not corporate. Now, I say all that to say, if I wanted to, and I had decided to apply myself, I could have, first of all, been a much better student, because that was just a matter of choice for me to be a better student. I could have just chose to do more academic work, which I just didn't do. And thus, that would have set me up to become a very good employee. And since I wasn't a very good student, I was not on the fast track to become a good employee, which is why it's a good reason why I didn't go that route. Now, at the same time, I have had many jobs in my life. Now, the jobs that I've had are not career track jobs. These are jobs. The difference between a job and a career is a job is something that you probably do temporarily. It's usually used as a placeholder for something else that you're going to go to. Whereas a career is something that you get in and you can see yourself moving up and advancing and working there for decades. I never had a job that was a career. I had jobs that were just jobs. Now, I worked at jobs where I had coworkers who looked at the same job as a career for them because their prospects were different from mine. My prospects were always, I'm working at this job until I can get my next opportunity, either going back to school, i.e. this is when I was still in college, or so I can get my next chance to go play professional basketball, or my first chance to play professional basketball. And once I was able to get those going and I started doing what we now have happening on the internet, I was very early on doing that. That's when I walked away from the job space and I told myself I would never go back. And I still tell myself that I am never going back. Now, I had coworkers, though, who treated these same jobs that I had as careers. So when I was working at Foot Locker, for example, which was my first job out of college, I had a manager. His name was Keith. And actually, when I first started working there, I was paid like an assistant manager. And that's what I was at Foot Locker. I was an assistant manager. I got hired as an assistant manager because I had a college degree. I don't know why that matters, but that's why I got hired there, or how I got hired there. And when I first started, I didn't know anything about the Foot Locker process. So even though I was technically paid as an assistant manager, there were two other managers working at the store. Usually the store only has two managers. But I was a third manager while I was learning the job, and there were two other guys. So the other guy's name was, what the hell was this guy's name? Let's just say his name was, I can't remember his damn name. He was a white guy. His name was, let's just call him Jay. That wasn't his name. I can't remember his damn name. But anyway, it was a younger white guy. His name was, let's say, Jay. And then the head manager was a guy named Keith. And both Jay and Keith, they worked Foot Locker, and I could tell by the conversations I had with both of them that to them, Foot Locker was a career because they didn't really have a bunch of other prospects. I don't believe either of them had went to college or at least not graduated, and neither of them was ambitious about doing anything other than that. And again, we had conversations because when you work at a Foot Locker in the middle of a mall on a weekday, there's nothing else to do but talk to the other people who work there. So we had plenty of conversations. They treated it as a career. I treated it as a job because I knew it was temporary for me. And again, as I said, I was generally a very good employee because all the jobs that I've had, I probably had somewhere between 20 and 30 jobs in my life outside of entrepreneurship. So not counting entrepreneurship, not counting playing basketball, I've had 20 to 30 jobs in my life. And I was a very good employee at the jobs that I did have because, again, I am good at following rules and I'm good at, once I know what the process is, I'm pretty good at executing. I'm a highly disciplined person. I'm very consistent and I'm very reliable. This is exactly what you want in an employee. Any of you who has staff or you have employees working for you, isn't that what you want? You want people who follow rules, they're disciplined, consistent, and reliable. All right? I'm all of those things. Listen, look at the work that I do these days. You can see that. So these are the very things that any employer wants in a staff member. The only reason I didn't become an employee, again, is not because I would not have succeeded at whatever you call success as an employee. I could be a very successful employee. I just wanted to do something different. And it's not my incapability. I just decided to make myself incapable, if you understand what I'm saying. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is why Dre Baldwin is not corporate. Number 2, I see too many things that are complete nonsense that I cannot not say something about. Now, this is an important point that I really want you all to understand. And I talked about this in episode number, let me see if I can find an episode where I talked about this because I remember saying it many years ago. It was episode number 997 was where I said this. The topic is why you need to start a podcast. And in that episode, I want to be clear. I wasn't saying that every single person should have a podcast. I basically laid out the reasons why a person needs to have a podcast. One of the reasons why I have this show And one of the reasons why we are 3,000 plus episodes strong and counting is because there are certain things that I want to say and need to fully articulate that it would bother me to not say them. It would bother me to not have these things expressed and said out loud. This is one of the reasons why when I saw the internet 20 years ago and I saw what it was, where it was going, I saw blogging was the first thing I saw online. Was that you can just write articles about pretty much whatever you want and say whatever you want to say and broadcast yourself. I saw that, then YouTube came shortly after, and then all the social media platforms that we know came over the next few years. This was all between 2005 and 2010. And I remember when I saw that, I knew it was a place for me specifically because I knew I had certain ways of looking at things and certain ways of expressing my thoughts that were different from most of the people around me. And I assumed that since I experienced a nice slice of life that it was a big enough sample size that I was able to surmise that since most of the people I had been around didn't think the way that I thought, I figured most of the people who I had not been around compared to them, relative to them, I probably had a different way of looking at things compared to the wider world as well. And that's why I knew I wanted to get on the internet and express myself. So I started with blogging, then I got to YouTube, and mostly I was focused on around basketball for the most part. And then once I started talking about mindset and other things around 2010, then many of the things I talk about now started about 2015. But I knew this was coming. I could see the opportunity to do so. So I'm saying all that as part of this point. There are certain things that I know I need to say that I know people don't understand them the right way, and it would pain me to not inform you. It would pain me to not have it on the record. So in saying what I just said, I'm not referring specifically to something that happens inside of a corporation. I'm just talking about life in general. And I'm going to relate to why this matters to corporations. So when I see things socially that may start to seep its way, or it starts maybe at a corporation or it gets into a corporation, and when you work in one of these systems, you can't just say anything that you want to say and still keep your job. Right? How many of you listen to this work in some corporate structure and you understand that you can't just get on the internet and say anything you want to say? Because if your bosses or the higher ups at wherever you work find out something that you said that is against the grain of what they want their employees, their representatives to be saying, you lose your job just because of that. And what you are talking about may not have anything to do with your job or anything to do with what you specifically do when you're working or anything with the company at all. But just the fact that you said it could cause you to lose your job. How many of you understand this? How many of you are Republicans and you can and will, you could, have and will vote for Donald Trump. And if you were to announce that on the internet, you could lose your job just because you said that. For no other reason, just because you said that. All right, that can happen. So the point being, if I wanted to say something like that, if I want to say I want to vote for Trump, or I say I want to vote for Harris, or I'm a Democrat, or I'm a Republican, I don't want to have to think twice about saying something like that publicly just because I think I might lose my job on the back end of making such a comment. I can't live that way. Now, I'm not knocking you if you can, and if you're willing to do that, and you're willing to hold your tongue and not say certain things because it's just maybe you don't want to get on a microphone and express it every day the way I do 3,000 days in a row. Maybe you don't want to be all on the internet and have everybody knowing your name and seeing your face and hearing what you have to say. Most people don't do that. I'm saying I'm one of the people who does. I'm one of the people who needs to do it. I don't want to do it. I need to do it. So this is the reason why I can't work in corporate, because I could not have the platform that I had saying the things that I say if I worked in corporate America. There's no way. I wouldn't survive. So again, when I talked about that, why should you put yourself out there? Why should you create content, something like this? The most important point is you get into publishing because you have something that you want to say that you can't stop. You can't not say it. Right? It is hurting you to not have it out there and not have it said. Now, if you have something that you want to say, that's one thing. If you have something that you can't not say, that's a whole other thing. That's when you absolutely know you need to be in the game. That's when you know you need to turn the microphone on. Things that I say here on the show are things that I can't hold in any longer. So I get excited when I'm coming up with the idea and coming up with my notes or whatever I want to talk about. And then I come and put it out there and I want to make sure that I'm on the record saying the things that I said. I need a space in which I can share these things. And this platform gives me that space. And again, I don't say the things that I say for shock value. I don't think any of you believes that. And I'm not saying them because I am saying them, because these are things that need to be heard and need to be heard by me. They need to be said the way that I say them and explained the way that I break them down. It's not that I'm the only one in the world saying some of the things that I say. Some of the things I say I haven't heard anybody else talk about. But some things I talk about, I'm not the only one who's talked about them, but I talk about them in a way that is unique and different. And that's why I have the space that I have. I have appointed myself as a person who is best qualified to say the things that I say. Because if I think someone else explains something better than I can explain it, then I won't bring that up. I won't talk about it. I don't have an episode on that subject because I think somebody else explained it better. But if I have a better way of explaining it that makes more sense to my audience, then I do my version of it. So if I were working in a corporate space with everything I've said to this point, things that I say here on the show would, for the most part, block me from ever getting called for an interview, let alone hired, and let alone keeping a job. So the first thing is, if you apply for a position, if your resume looks okay, then the next thing is, I would suppose whoever is going through those resumes is going to Google the person and find out, are there any red flags about this person that will cause us to not hire them, so we can not waste our time even going through the process with them. They would look me up and they would see me talking about every social issue you can name. I've talked about them, and often I have positions that are not the, let's say, corporate level accepted positions, and they wouldn't even call me in for a job interview. So I wouldn't even get interviewed, let alone when I get hired. Now, let's say that their search doesn't find any red flags because they couldn't find the things that I said about BLM or about anything neutral or positive about Donald Trump or anything about uh, girls deciding that they can be boys and boys deciding that they can be girls. And they didn't hear me say any of those things, or me trashing the COVID jab that a bunch of people took 5 shots of, and you still got the virus, and they're still calling it a vaccine, and people saying, well, hey, at least it would have been worse if I didn't get the vaccine. This makes no sense. Let's say they didn't hear me say any of those things, and I made it in and I got all the way to the point where they were about to make me a job offer. Well, then maybe their search will find it then. I think let's do one last search of this guy just to make sure they would find it then, and boom, there goes my job offer, gone, disappeared in the dust. Or let's say I got the job. Let's say I got the job. They didn't Google me at all, and then when I get the job, the coworkers who work there with me, they start asking me what I do when I'm not working. I say, well, I got the show called Work on Your Game. Then people start listening to the show and they hear me say something, and then they start talking about it in the office. It gets around to the higher ups, and they find out the things that I said, and boom, there goes my job. I'm fired. So at one level or another, I'm going to get outed, exposed, and fired. Not in a negative way, but people are going to find out that I'm saying these things, and corporations are going to say, we can't have this guy working here. He's fired, or don't hire him. You can't trash DEI and work in a corporation. I've done several episodes trashing diversity, equity, and inclusion, not the dictionary definitions, but the way that it is deployed, which all of you understand. I've trashed that many times. What corporation could I get hired at trashing DEI? Name one. Name a corporation I could work for being that I trash DEI. It's impossible. Every corporation has bought into DEI, so if I trash it and they go and hire me, they might be hiring me because I'm black. All right, so there's no way I'm getting hired if I'm trashing DEI. Or you can't trash the LGBTQ community and their encroachment on children's spaces and keep a corporate job. I can't say, hey, you got to keep those transgender people who are not real. There's no such thing as a transgender person. You can't have them going to school and reading books to kids. That's ridiculous. They found out, if the corporation found out that I said that, I would never get hired or I get fired. You can't trash Black Lives Matter and work in a corporation. Maybe nowadays you can. People have kind of cooled off on Black Lives Matter, but there was a time when trashing Black Lives Matter, you get you fired immediately. So you can't use the profanity that I've used on this platform, but regardless of what I'm talking about, and keep a corporate job. You can't piss off people who are corporate and keep a corporate job. So let's just say my boss just doesn't have the same views as me. I'm not going to get the job just because my boss doesn't like me. They don't see things the way that I see them. We are not aligned psychographically. I'm not getting hired. In the corporate world, folks, you got to be very good at holding your tongue and not saying the stuff that you actually want to say. And you got to pretend to like people who you absolutely don't like. You have to do that when you work in corporate. How many people listen to me work in the corporate world and you are nodding your head along with what I'm saying right now? I know this is true because I have a lot of members. I've had a lot of coaching clients and friends who have worked in the corporate space, and I know this is exactly how it works. You got to pretend to like people who you hate. You have to hold your tongue when there's something that you want to say. You got to go along with stuff that you don't really want to go along with. And I'm not knocking you if this is what you're doing, because corporations tend to be able to pay very well. You are able to advance and do your thing. You make good money working in a corporate job. I'm not knocking anybody who has a corporate job. What I'm saying is I couldn't do it simply because I have this flaw to my character in which I have to say these things. And once I put them out there, that basically kills my opportunity to get the job. You are better than me in that you haven't said these things. So your opportunity hasn't been killed the way mine has. All right, that's just how it is. All right. So I don't like playing that game, even though I don't have a problem with people who do play that game. All right. I just know that game is not for me. Everything ain't for everybody. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is why Dre Baldwin is not corporate. This is going to be a 2-part series, by the way. Point number 3, I refuse to have bosses. One reason I'm not corporate is I refuse to have a boss. And when you're corporate, you have a boss. Doesn't matter what role you hold. The CEO of a corporation has bosses. The bosses are the shareholders. All right, they're the bosses. Because if they don't like how the corporation is going, they don't like how business is going, they will fire the CEO. You ever heard of a CEO getting fired? Okay. Because if you're truly the boss, you can't be fired. Nobody can fire the boss. CEO is a boss. They are not the boss. This person in middle management, they are a boss to somebody, but they're not a boss to everybody. The boss cannot be fired. And I want to put myself in a position where nobody can fire me. I.e., nobody can tell me what to do at the same time. If nobody can fire you, nobody can tell you what to do. If somebody can fire you, they can tell you what to do. I wanted to be in a position where no one can fire me and no one can tell me what to do. And now when you only have one option when you want that, that's entrepreneurship. There is no other option. There's no other way you can get both of those except being an entrepreneur. So I decided over the course of several experiences that I didn't want to have a boss. This wasn't something that I immediately came up with when I was 18. This is something that I learned over time. So I'll give you some examples. So when I got introduced to network marketing while I was in college, and I read Robert Kiyosaki's book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and over time I learned more of what Kiyosaki was talking about in that book. If you haven't read the book, you should. But one of the things he talks about in there is never work for money. It's one of the basic principles that Kiyosaki's book was founded on. Never work for money. Figure out ways, or not even, it is never work for money. But what he explained was that poor people, because he was comparing poor versus rich, poor people work for money. When they want money, they go find work to do. And if they want more money, they do more work. And we can all see that there's a slippery slope to that, because there's only so much effort you can give, there's almost so much time you can trade. But he said what rich people do is they instead get money to go to work for them. They make money be their employee, and money works for them. So instead of being a slave to money, you make money a slave to you. You make money your employee. And I understood it when he said it. I didn't know how to apply it at that time because I was still a college student learning an American educational system's idea of quote unquote business. I have a business degree. But over time, I learned more of what he meant as I got real life experience. So I learned through experiences as an employee, whether working at retail jobs like CVS and movie theaters and Pizza Huts and places like that, and as a professional athlete where you are technically an employee because you have a boss, you're the general manager, the owner of the team, the coach. These are all bosses of yours. They can all tell you what to do. And they all control whether you have a job or not. So you are an employee. I learned in those places that I, regardless of my talent or ability to perform, was not the person in charge, and I am not the boss. And none of those places without a person in charge, and none of those places without a boss. You be the best player, it doesn't make you the boss. That means you're the best player. You are not the boss when you play a team sport for a living. Another experience is when I learned that I could take ideas out of my head, turn them into products and services, and exchange them for money. It's also known as intellectual property, and that's really how I became an entrepreneur. Is I started taking ideas that I already had, knowledge that I already had. I started packaging it in a way that others could consume it. I put a price tag on it and I started selling it, and that's when I realized, okay, this is exactly what I need to be doing. Because I knew I couldn't play sports forever, and also I realized that I could be my own boss immediately if I went to the intellectual property route. That's exactly what I did. So once I realized that I could create that stuff at will, i.e., intellectual property, and I create intellectual property literally every single day. Once I realized I could do that very easily, I was determined to not have a boss and determined to never have one ever again. And I simply don't like any human being able to tell me what to do or even trying to tell me what to do. And I've designed my life in such a way that there is not a human on this planet who can tell me what to do, at least not to anyone I need to listen. Maybe somebody could try to tell me what to do, but I don't need to listen to them. So if you want to hear a story about that, listen to the story where I trashed the medical system in the United States. It was in episode number 2338. I'll tell you the story of when my son was born and a bum-ass doctor at Jackson Hospital in Miami tried to tell me what to do, and it went well for me. It didn't go well for her. And the whole point is, this is something that just matters to me, principle-wise. I just don't want anybody telling me what to do. And again, that's just part of my makeup, my personality, and my wiring as a person. I'm not saying that you're wrong if you don't mind being in that position. And I'm not saying that you're right if you accept my position. I'm just telling you why it's my position. Again, this series today and tomorrow is about why I am not corporate. It's not telling you not to do these things. Let's recap today's class, which again is why Dre Baldwin is not corporate. Number one, I am very good at following rules and processes. I simply just don't want to. I just don't want to follow rules and processes that I don't have to. Number two, I say too many things that are complete nonsense that I cannot hold my tongue about and not say something. It's the reason why this platform exists. And once I start putting those things out there, there's no way I could work in a corporation because they would see it and that'd be it. It'd be over. Number three, I refuse to have bosses. I just don't want anybody telling me what to do. I don't want anyone even thinking that they have the standing to tell me what to do. And the only way that I can ensure that that is the reality is I can't have a boss. That's just how it is. So with that said, tomorrow we're going to get into part 2 of this mini series of why I cannot be corporate. Make sure you go to workonyourgameuniversity.com if you want to work with me directly and get access to all of our best trainings, all of our best courses, and me as a direct coach. Only way you can do that is at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre, all